Welcome, everyone. We will get started in just 1 minute. Thank you for joining us today. I am Beth Gall. I'm the Senior Director of Candidate, Member, and Volunteer Engagement at the SOA. I'm so happy you can join us for today's training webcast. We are going to kick it off with the next slide. So first, I want to say welcome to the Secretary or Budget Manager webcast, and congratulations on taking this important role for your section or community. As Secretary or Budget Manager, you are part of the leadership group for your council. So before we get started, let's go over a few housekeeping items. This webcast is being recorded, and we will send you the slides and a link to the recording in a few days. At any time during this webcast, please enter your questions into the Q&A, and we will address all questions at the end of this webcast. Next slide. So during this webcast, you'll get a chance to learn about the roles of Secretary and Budget Manager. We're going to go over best practices for the annual section or community funding allocations, the quarterly financial statements, developing an annual budget for your group, expense reimbursements, how your section or community delivers value to your membership, and discuss partnerships and contracts. I am going to now turn it over to Jessica to take us going forward.
Perfect. Thanks, Beth. And we can go the next slide and one more. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about the secretary role today. The secretary and budget manager are two of the council's leadership roles. So some groups do choose to combine the positions so that one council or CAP member is responsible for both. The main responsibility of the secretary is to take notes during all council or advisory team meetings and to distribute the notes shortly afterwards. This is a very important role. The notes should include all votes and decisions. Typically, they are referenced when questions arise during following the discussion regarding past conversations. Some secretaries have chosen to use the agenda as the template and take notes on that agenda. Others have inserted pre-reads that council members send prior to the call. So there's really no correct way to take notes, but we encourage each secretary to find a style that they feel comfortable with. If the secretary is worried about keeping track of everything on a call, it can be recorded by your engagement specialist. Just let them know that you'd like that. The secretary may also be asked to distribute the agenda. Typically, the meeting notes are reviewed by the council or advisory team members on a monthly call so that any edits can be made if needed. The notes are not the same as minutes, so they do not require a formal vote or approval by the council. Next, I'll turn it over to Caitlin to talk about the budget manager.
Thanks, Jess. We can go to the next slide. Budget managers are responsible for monitoring the section or community expenses and should alert the council of any potential issues. All information related to the section or community finances can be found in the quarterly financial statements. Beginning in 2025, budget managers will collaborate with your engagement specialist to prepare an annual budget. Council members should always keep in mind that sections and the emerging topics community are part of the SOA and as such must comply with all SOA policies, guidelines, and procedures. Next slide. Budget managers are also responsible for providing updates on the quarterly financial statements. The quarterly financial statements are created by the SOA accounting department and then sent to your engagement specialist. The engagement specialist then verifies the expenses and lists out the details on what has been spent for that quarter. Once the financials are completed, your engagement specialist will email the financials to the chair, vice chair, secretary, and the budget manager. And we can go to the next slide. We have a poll on this next slide. And you can go ahead and launch that poll. Question is, what statement is true of either a secretary or budget manager? A, the secretary is responsible for leading all council or advisory team meetings. The budget manager is responsible for taking notes during all council meetings. The secretary and budget manager are council and advisory team leadership roles, or none of the above. I'll leave that open for another couple seconds. Alrighty, and that is correct. The secretary and the budget manager are leadership roles on the council. We can go to the next slide. As a section council or community advisory team leader, it's extremely important that you participate in monthly calls, planning meetings, take polls and votes in a timely manner, and take on additional council or CAT tasks and roles as needed. All SOA volunteers are required to sign and adhere to SOA's volunteer agreement. The volunteer agreement includes items such as volunteer conduct, confidentiality, conflict of interest, volunteer contributions, and antitrust to protect all volunteers and the organization. And next we can go 2 more slides down. We'll be talking about the financial statements. We typically receive the financial statements about 6 weeks after the end of the quarter, with the exception of the 4th quarter, which is typically completed at the end of February. Anticipated release dates for each quarter are around May 15th for Q1, August 15th for Q2, November 15th for Q3, and March 15th for Q4. Next slide. On this slide are listed examples of the uses for your section's community annual allocated funds. Most, if not all, of your expenses will come from activities that add value for your group's membership. You'll be coordinating newsletters, webcast, podcast, meeting sessions, as well as exploring networking events and contests. There are many decisions you will need to make during the year about how best to budget your funding allocation, but the #1 question in your mind should always be, does this add value to your membership? That's why it's so important to work with your council or advisory team in coordination with your engagement specialist to make a budget plan. And on the next slide, we have a poll. I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll. And the question is, what statement is true? A, the section will receive its budget allocation ahead of Q1. B, your engagement specialist adds the explanatory notes to each financial statement. C, each section receives quarterly financials. Or D, all of the above. And we can go ahead and leave that open for a couple more seconds. All right, we can go ahead and close that poll and we'll see the results. And D, all of the above, all of those statements are true. We can go to the next slide and I'm going to actually turn it over to Carla.
Thank you, Caitlin. Now let's talk about creating an annual budget. Next, please. As your section or community develops a budget, your engagement specialist can provide historical information related to your section or community's expenses that you can use as a guide to help the council make decisions on how to use their funding allocation. When someone brings up an idea that will require funds, please keep in mind that it is the budget manager who is responsible for knowing whether it can fit into the section or community budget. Your engagement specialist will be able to assist you with this. Next. Of course, one of your guiding principles should always be to provide value to your section members. Next, please. Your council or advisory team gets to choose how to distribute the section or community's budget allocation, using it to provide the best possible value to your membership. Ideas include hiring a well-known speaker for a meeting session or webcast, giving your members a subscription to an informative and useful journal, or maybe deciding to hold a networking event where one of your section members could connect with the person that will help them get their next job or step up in their career. These are only a few ideas of how your section's financial resources could be used. And I'm sure your council will have other great ideas. Remember, the objective is to provide the best value to your section members. Next. And now we'll move on to expense reimbursements. Next, please. If you are asked to travel for section council business, this could include such things as attending a council face-to-face meeting, or speaking on behalf of the council at a meeting that is not held in conjunction with an SOA-sponsored education event, you may request travel reimbursement. Travel reimbursement requests need approval by a vote from the council or advisory team. There are additional travel expense guidelines that each council member must comply with. Complete travel expense guidelines are included in the Best Practices Handbook, which we'll discuss shortly. If you have any questions about the travel expense guidelines, please reach out to your engagement specialist. And now I'll turn it over to Dee.
Thanks so much, Carla. We're going to move on to partnerships and contracts. Next slide, please. Sections and the emerging topics community are part of the SOA and as such cannot enter into any contract or external partnership without SOA approval. Your group is similar to a sub of a company. Therefore, SOA assumes all liability for contracts and partnerships. All contracts and partnerships with an outside organization must be reviewed by the SOA legal team. Multiple sections alongside the emerging topics community can financially support any event. The most common instances for sections to partner is on an event at one of SOA's major meetings, the health meeting, the VALACT meeting, and the Impact Conference. Webcasts are another activity that can be co-sponsored. The council who submits the proposal to the other groups must provide information about the event, justification for the request of additional funding, and the anticipated financial responsibility for each section. Once each group has received approval from their council, the details will be provided to the engagement specialist who will develop the partnership agreement. Each section or community chair will sign the agreement, and this will be kept on file. Funds will be deducted from the appropriate section or community account after the event. This formality helps document the partnership, and it's important because payments can come months after an event and can be dealt with by different council officers. Here are some points to keep in mind when entering into a partnership with another section. Make sure each section makes a substantive contribution. Clearly define the roles for each section. Clearly define and mutually understand the benefit or opportunity and the cost or risk for each group, and have a clear understanding of the expected outcome of the partnership. If you've been approached to create a partnership or sign a contract with an external company or organization, your first call should be to your engagement specialist. They can review the partnership and provide guidance on the types of partnerships or contracts the SOA typically agrees to. Next, I'll turn it back over to Beth.
Thanks, Dee. So we are going to be touching on best practices really quick. Next slide. So on this screen, you will see a listing of additional resources, but don't worry about trying to write these down or trying to remember them. We will be sending everyone a copy of this presentation, as well as an electronic copy of our Section Council Best Practices Handbook. In addition to these resources, you will receive updates following each SOA board meeting and invitations to the SOA Council of Section Chairs meetings. The updates are shared after each in-person board meeting and highlight the outcomes of the meeting and how they relate to sections in the community. The Council of Section Chairs meetings are held twice a year, once in the fall, which we just wrapped up, and again in the spring. They provide opportunities to network, gain additional leadership skills, and learn from fellow council leaders. For those unable to attend, I hope you all found the benefit in joining this year. Please know that we are all here to help you as you lead your section forward this coming year. Next slide. We are now going to open it up for questions. So please put your questions into the Q&A and we can answer any questions that you might have about the presentation. Okay, well, since I don't see any questions, thank you so much for joining us today. Feel free to reach out to your engagement specialist if you have any questions about this. Otherwise, you will be receiving this presentation in a few days for further review. Thanks again.